My name is Audrey, and at 32, I spent the last decade building my career as a manager at Preston and Associates. While my younger sisters, Sarah and Emma, have been busy starting their families, I've been climbing the corporate ladder. Don't get me wrong, I love my job, but sometimes I wondered if I've missed something along the way. No husband, no kids, just me in my corner office with a view of the city, whose endless lights are mesmerizing yet feel cold in the silence of the night. It was a typical Tuesday morning when my phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, and I answered while sifting through a stack of reports on my desk. "Hey, Audrey," Sarah's voice came through the speaker with her usual ease. At 26, she was always so cheerful and full of energy, as if life spun faster around her than anyone else. I took a moment to process what was happening as I moved papers aside with one hand and scrolled through quarterly figures with the other. "So, you know Mom's turning 60 in 2 months, right?" Sarah paused, letting the fact sink in. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and pursed my lips, sensing there was more to this conversation. "We're planning something special and getting everyone involved to pitch in." That caught my attention. "All right, what are we talking about?" When Sarah mentioned the amount, I nearly choked on my coffee. It was more than I had spent on my last vacation, which, come to think of it, was 3 years ago. "I know it's a lot," she added quickly. "But it's for Mom, you get that, don't you?" No, it's fine," I said, already opening my banking app. "I'll transfer it right now." "Great. And one more thing," Sarah continued, her tone slowing slightly. "Make sure to take a week off work for the celebration. Don't plan anything else during that time." I agreed briefly, though I felt a slight tension creeping in. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, deadlines, and presentations. Occasionally, the thought crossed my mind that my sisters might be planning something extraordinary with all that money, but every time I asked, their answers were evasive, leaving me in the dark. Work consumed me, and Mom's birthday gradually slipped to the back of my mind. Time sped by, and soon it was Saturday dinner, with all of us gathered at our parents' house. The familiar comfort of the family home enveloped us, Mom bustling around with plates, Dad telling the same old jokes that always made us laugh, Aunt Susan quietly chatting with Emma, and my cousins Michael and Rachel discussing something with broad smiles. I relaxed, feeling the chaos of family life wash away the stress of the past weeks. But then Sarah, casually pushing peas around her plate, decided to drop a bombshell. "We've finalized everything for Mom's birthday," she announced, her voice drawing everyone's attention. "We're all spending a week at Mountain Pine Resort." The table erupted in excited chatter. Mom beamed, Dad was already dreaming about skiing, and my sisters were animatedly discussing the slopes and forest trails. "Why didn't anyone tell me this earlier?" I muttered, feeling a twinge of annoyance. "I don't even have ski gear, and there's hardly time to get any." Sarah just smiled. "Don't worry, Audrey. They have rentals there. Besides, it's only a week. It'll be great." I nodded, though deep down, I couldn't shake a small sense of unease. A resort, mountains, snow, this wasn't what I'd envisioned after years of being absorbed in work. But if it made Mom happy, how could I say no? A hush fell over the table. Not just an awkward pause, but a silence that seemed to absorb all sound, leaving only the dull thud of my heartbeat. Mom cleared her throat, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, a premonition of words I didn't want to hear. "Well, dear," she began in the tone I knew all too well, the one she used when she was about to ask for something I couldn't refuse. "We were thinking you could do us a huge favor and watch the kids while we're there." I froze, staring at her, then slowly looked around the table. My family sat there, each of them carefully avoiding my gaze. I waited for someone to laugh, to say it was a joke, but the silence stretched on. The only sound was the faint clink of utensils on plates. "You want me to babysit the kids?" I finally managed to say. My voice sounded strange, as if it belonged to someone else. My mind began to tally up Emma's little boy Jason, Sarah's daughter Lucy, Michael's twins, Tom and Anna, and Rachel's son Pete. 5 kids. All under the age of 7. Well, you're so good with them, Mom said, as if that were the only explanation I needed. They adore their Aunt Audrey. I looked around the table again. Their faces were expectant, calm. No one even tried to hide that they were waiting for my usual yes. But that's not fair. I heard my voice rise louder than I intended. I want to celebrate too. It's Mom's birthday. Emma sighed and set down her fork. Oh, come on, Audrey. You'd be bored anyway. It'll be noisy and crowded. Bored? I echoed, feeling indignation simmering inside me. Why would you think I'd be bored? She shrugged and shot a glance at Sarah. Something unspoken passed between them, an agreement forged in silence. You're great with the kids. They love you, Emma said calmly. And let's be honest, you don't really have anything to take a break from. My heart tightened. I felt an icy knot forming in my chest. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, almost in a whisper. Sarah, who had been quiet until now, unexpectedly chimed in with a patronizing tone. Emma just means that you don't have kids. Or a husband. There's nothing you really need a break from. The green beans on my plate blurred before my eyes. I blinked quickly, willing myself not to cry. I knew I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Instead, I quietly pushed back my chair and stood. Audrey, Mom's voice carried a note of concern, but it wasn't enough to stop me. I grabbed my purse from the counter and headed for the door. No one tried to stop me. No one even called after me. The only sound I heard was Mom's voice trailing from the dining room. Don't worry, she said, likely addressing my sisters. She'll be upset at first, but she'll come around. She always does. Their voices continued in the background, fading into a hum. By the time I got to my car, they were already talking about ski slopes and winter gear again. It was as if I hadn't even been there. The evening air outside was crisp and cold, cutting to the bone. But the chill helped clear my head. I took a deep breath, feeling the anger slowly give way to a bitter clarity. 10 years. 10 years of putting everyone else first. I had been the dependable one, the reliable one, always ready to help. And what did I get in return? Not even a request, but the casual assumption that I would simply say yes. No one thought to ask if I wanted to spend my vacation days babysitting their kids. No one even bothered to include me in the planning. My time, my money, my energy, they were all just resources for them. And my feelings? They didn't matter. They didn't even see me as a full member of the family. I spent half the night pacing around my apartment, replaying every family dinner, every holiday, every moment when I had dropped everything to help someone else. The memories flooded back, each one now tinged with a darker shade. I saw them differently, not as proof of my love for my family, but as evidence of how little I valued myself. I was 16 when I cooked dinner while Mom sat with Emma, helping her with homework. I was 18 when I skipped spring break with friends to babysit Sarah while my parents enjoyed a weekend getaway. At 21, I worked 2 jobs to pay for Emma's prom dress. Back then, it all felt normal, part of what it meant to be the eldest sister. But now, these images returned with a new weight. Sacrifice after sacrifice, like an unbroken chain dragging behind me for years. Emma's voice echoed in my mind, Audrey, can you watch Jason for a few hours? I really need a break. Michael's familiar request, Audrey, could you take the twins for the weekend? And, of course, Rachel's line, you're so good with kids. Their words played on a loop, like a worn-out record. I had always said yes. Always. Even when I was exhausted after a long work week. Even when I had an important meeting the next day. I'd prided myself on being the reliable sister, the perfect daughter. But now that pride tasted bitter. I collapsed onto the couch, the cool leather yielding beneath me. My gaze fell on a stack of photo albums on the coffee table. Family vacations where I was always the one behind the camera. Holiday gatherings where I was always in the kitchen, cooking for everyone while they laughed in the living room. When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted? Sarah's words continued to echo in my mind. It doesn't seem like you need a break from family life. They seem to be etched in stone, becoming an unceasing question. Why do my accomplishments, my career, my decisions seem less significant to them? Because I'm not married and I don't have children? As if all my sacrifices meant nothing because they didn't fit into their definition of what matters. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned in bed, replaying every moment when I gave myself completely. I remembered how I worked through college on a scholarship to avoid burdening my parents financially. How I started my career right after graduation to help Sarah and Emma finish school. How I sent money home even when I was cutting back on myself. It all seemed like an act of love and care back then. But now I began to see it differently, as an obligation I imposed on myself. By morning, I decided I needed to take action. I'm not a confrontational person, and I never have been. But now I understood that silence only amplified the injustice. I needed to express my feelings, but in a way that wouldn't cause unnecessary conflict. I decided to speak up as soon as morning came. I waited for a reasonable hour on Sunday before picking up the phone and dialing the number. Mom answered on the third ring, her voice as upbeat as ever. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to speak evenly so my nervousness wouldn't show. I was thinking about the resort trip. In fact, I'd come up with a solution that seemed fair and reasonable for everyone. I would pay for a professional nanny to take care of all 5 kids. That way, everyone could enjoy the holiday without sacrificing their time or peace of mind. With that suggestion in mind, I called Mom. On the other end of the line, silence stretched on too long. I began to doubt if she had even heard me when her voice, tense and wavering, finally came through. "This isn't going to work, Audrey." "Why not?" I asked, surprised. "We can't trust some stranger with the kids." "They're used to you," Mom said, her tone implying that her point was indisputable. "Mom, I want to be part of the celebration. I want to be there, at your birthday," I tried to explain. "You know, you're not exactly a social butterfly," she interrupted sharply. "You'll probably feel uncomfortable with all the noise and bustle. But the kids will keep you busy, and you'll enjoy spending time with them. It's perfect for everyone." Before I could respond, I heard a click. The call had ended without even a goodbye. I sat there, holding the phone in my hand, feeling her words settle heavily in my chest. Her voice echoed in my head, the dismissive tone ringing through me. She hadn't just refused me. She hadn't even given me a chance to speak. The phone vibrated again. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. "How dare you?" she hissed as soon as I answered. Her voice was so hostile that it took me a few seconds to grasp what was happening. "Mom just told me about your little suggestion to hire a nanny." "Are you trying to ruin everything?" she continued. I straightened up, feeling a mix of hurt and surprise swirl inside me. "Ruin it?" I repeated, my words getting caught in my throat. "Sarah, I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone." "We already have a solution." Her voice grew louder, sharper. "Everything is planned, Audrey. The resort is booked, the activities are set. And now you're acting completely selfish, trying to change everything at the last minute." The word selfish struck me like a slap. I froze, barely breathing. "I'm selfish?" My voice quivered. Yes. We've been planning this for weeks, she went on, as if she hadn't heard me. Everyone's excited, and you can't do one simple thing for the family. I gripped the phone so tightly that my fingers turned white. Are you serious? I asked, unable to believe my ears. Yes. And you know what? If you ruin this trip, if you ruin Mom's birthday, don't even bother talking to me again. I mean it, Audrey. Click. The call ended. I sat there, stunned by her threat. Barely managing to catch my breath, the phone vibrated again, but this time it was messages. Sarah's name reappeared on the screen. Family should stick together, I read the first message. Then another followed. We all help each other. Remember when I watered your plants while you were at the conference? Another message popped up. You're so good with kids. They love you. Why can't you just forget your sensitivity and think about what's best for the family? I felt my cheeks flush. The anger I'd been trying to suppress burst to the surface. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed my response. Real family doesn't use each other for personal gain. A real family respects everyone's wishes and includes everyone in their plans. A real family doesn't manipulate or guilt trip. I sent the message and froze, staring at the screen. The 3 dots appeared several times, as if Sarah was trying to write something, but then they disappeared. That's when it hit me. They weren't even planning to include me in these plans. Everything, from the request for money to the cautious suggestion of taking time off, was calculated to use me. No one considered that I might have my own desires. No one even thought that it might matter. They'd been planning this the whole time. While I stayed up late at work, while I babysat their children, while I was the perfect daughter and sister, they had secretly organized this trip. They used my money, worked out my schedule, and were counting on me to watch 5 kids without even talking to me. And now, when I refused to play along with their script, they began to use whatever they could think of: guilt, threats, emotional blackmail. They were trying to push me back into the box they had created for me. Something incredible happens when you finally see through this fog of manipulation. Everything becomes painfully clear. A strange feeling overtook me, a lightness, as if the burden I had unknowingly carried for years suddenly vanished. Instead of the guilt that usually weighed on me in situations like this, I felt something else. Determination. I opened my laptop. The search bar blinked invitingly, as if it knew the time for change had come. Within an hour, I had booked a beach hotel in Florida. Nothing extravagant, but with a cozy balcony overlooking the ocean, just a few minutes' walk from the beach. I even allowed myself a little luxury. I bought a first-class ticket. After everything that had happened, it didn't feel like an extravagant expense. The next few days at work passed quietly. My family stopped calling and texting. Maybe they thought I had resigned myself and was preparing for the week with their kids, buying snacks, planning activities, just like I had always done before. The thought made me smile as I carefully packed my suitcase with beach clothes and a new swimsuit. Planning a vacation? My colleague Janet asked, noticing me checking the weather forecast for Florida. Sometimes you need to do something unexpected, I replied, realizing how good it felt to say that out loud. On the morning of my flight, I looked around the apartment. Everything was spotless, the fridge was empty, the windows were closed, and the place was in perfect order, a habit I couldn't shake. But this time, everything was different. I wouldn't be here. No calls asking me to watch the kids, no sudden requests, no late-night work emergencies. When the plane took off, I turned off my phone and put it in my bag. No messages, no social media, no emails. No family dramas. Just me, the beach, and a week of complete freedom. The Florida air, warm and thick, enveloped me as I stepped out of the airport. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the salty scent of the ocean filled my lungs. It felt like a new beginning, as though I had stepped into a different reality. My hotel room was even better than in the photos. The balcony, with its view of the endless blue horizon, became my new sanctuary. The waves crashed on the shore, their rhythmic sound bringing me the long-awaited peace. That first day, I took off my shoes and walked barefoot along the beach, feeling the warm sand slip between my toes. I couldn't remember the last time I allowed myself to do something like that. No goals, no rush. Just being. I swam in the hotel pool, enjoying the cool water, read a book without distractions or requests, and had dinner at a small beachside restaurant, where it was just me and the sound of the surf. That evening, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sun sink into the ocean, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. No calls, no messages. Just silence, broken only by the whisper of the waves. The next morning, I decided to ride a bike along the coast, stopping for a cup of coffee at a small cafe, where the owner gladly told me about life in this quiet corner of paradise. Then I returned to the ocean, sat by the water, and let the waves gently touch my feet. This week was a true revelation. I started to realize how long I had ignored my own desires for the sake of others. And for the first time in many years, I felt truly free. I savored the last moments of peace. I knew I would have to turn on my phone soon to finally face the chaos I had left behind. But even that realization couldn't dampen my mood. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, wrapping me in warmth that I decided to keep with me as long as I could. When I finally turned on my phone, it instantly began vibrating, warning me of dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, and voicemails. The notifications kept coming, with timestamps showing that it all started exactly 1 week ago, on the day I left. My fingers trembled slightly as I began scrolling through their messages. The first ones were from Sarah. "Where are you? We're outside your house." Then came others. "Audrey, open the door. The kids are starting to worry." Emma. "Hey. We brought Tom and Anna, like we planned. Are you home?" Michael. "Audrey, what's going on? Pete is asking why we're waiting outside." Rachel. I could almost see the scene in my mind, my sisters and cousins standing outside my empty house, confused, with 5 anxious children. Suitcases at their feet, their carefully laid plans crumbling right before their eyes. The tone of the messages began to change. At first, confusion gave way to panic. "Audrey, this isn't funny. Where are you? Pick up the phone. What should we do with the kids? You can't just disappear like this." Then panic turned into anger. Sarah's messages became venomous. "You're a selfish bitch. How could you do this to us?" Emma wasn't any better. "I can't believe how immature you are. You ruined Mom's birthday." But the most unexpected were the messages from my Aunt Susan, who, I thought, had always been calm. "You're an ungrateful little brat. You've ruined everything we were counting on. These kids are suffering because of you." Messages from my mom started later that day. "I'm so disappointed in you, Audrey. I never thought you could be so selfish." Even my dad, who rarely messaged me, sent a brief note. "Your mom is crying. Hope you're happy with yourself." The voicemails were even worse. I heard the anger, disappointment, and accusations in the voices of my relatives. Even distant family members, whom I hadn't spoken to in months, suddenly appeared to condemn me. "You've always been so reliable. How could you do this to your family? These poor kids." I sat in my peaceful hotel room, reading message after message. Each new text revealed the true faces of my family. Their words, their accusations, their assumptions about my character, it all exposed a side I might have known but had refused to see. They had been using me for years, hiding their convenience behind smiles and apparent gratitude. Without replying to a single message, I packed my things and headed to the airport. It was time to go home, but I was no longer the Audrey who left a week ago. That Audrey would probably be apologizing right now. She would feel guilty and try to make amends. But that part of me stayed behind, on the beach in Florida. When I got home, the first thing I did was unpack my suitcase and carefully put away my beach clothes. But before I could tidy up the apartment, I heard an aggressive knock on the door. The knock repeated. I walked toward the door and froze, feeling a slight shiver run through my body. Someone clearly wasn't planning to leave without an answer. I heard the key turn in the lock. The sound pierced the silence like thunder on a clear day. The emergency key, which I had once given to my mother, just in case, was now being used as a weapon. The door flew open, and they stormed into my apartment like a furious storm. My mom was in the lead, her face flushed with anger. On either side of her were Sarah and Emma, their eyes burning with a wild mix of hurt and outrage. The peaceful feeling I had nurtured in Florida vanished like morning fog under the scorching sun. "Do you even realize what you've done?" Sarah screamed, stepping forward. "You ruined everything. Everything." I stood still, not moving, as they spilled their fury in my living room, the very same living room where I had babysat their children so many times. Here, I had canceled my own plans to fit their needs, to be their reliable support. Mike and John refused to stay with the kids. Emma blurted out, clearly referring to her husband and brother. They suddenly had urgent things to take care of. So Sarah had to stay home with all 5 kids while we went to the resort. "She missed Mom's birthday because of you." "The whole trip was ruined," my mom added, her voice trembling with suppressed disappointment. "No one could enjoy the vacation. All we talked about was how you betrayed us. How you let us all down. Your dad couldn't even ski properly." Emma jumped in. "He was so upset." They spoke over each other, as if competing to see who could express their outrage the loudest. I listened as their accusations became more absurd with every passing minute. Something inside me suddenly snapped. But not in the way they probably expected. I started laughing. Loudly, uncontrollably. The sound of my laughter sliced through their tirade like a knife. They froze, staring at me as though I had suddenly gone mad. "What's so funny?" my mom demanded, her face turning even redder. What could possibly be funny about this situation? I wiped the tears of laughter from my eyes and looked at them. "Do you really not see how ridiculous this is?" I said, not hiding the sarcasm. "Don't you realize how absurd you sound right now?" "Absurd?" Emma mumbled, confused. "Yes, absurd," I repeated, finally finding firmness in my voice. "You secretly planned this trip without asking me. You decided I would look after your children, you took my money, told me to take time off work. And you just assumed I would go along with your plans. And now, when everything falls apart because of your own assumptions, you blame me?" "But you always helped before," my mom said, her voice growing quieter, as if she herself understood how weak her arguments were. "And that's the problem, Mom," I said, not hiding my bitterness. "I always helped. And that's why you started taking it for granted. You stopped seeing me as a daughter or sister and started seeing me as a free nanny. You stopped considering my feelings, my plans, my life." "That's not true," Sarah retorted, though her voice lacked conviction. "Is it not?" I raised an eyebrow. "Then why didn't you include me in the planning? Why didn't you ask me if I wanted to go to the resort? Why did you just assume I would be happy to stay with 5 kids while everyone else celebrates?" I looked carefully at their faces, hoping to see some recognition, some sign of understanding. But instead, I saw their expressions harden even further. "You're selfish," my mom finally said, her voice turning cold. "You ruined my birthday. You hurt your sisters. You disappointed the kids. I didn't raise you like this." Her words were the final blow, but they didn't trigger the reaction she likely expected. Instead, I felt calm, a quiet confidence in my own rightness. "Hope is broken," I said, feeling the weight of the words settle on my chest. "No, Mom, you're the one being selfish in all of this." She stood before me, holding back her rage, and in her eyes I saw pain that seemed deeper than everything that had happened between us. As if she had been looking for a reason to blame me all along, and there it was, I myself. "It's your fault, not mine." My mom straightened up, towering like a rock ready to crash down on me. Her face was as hard as stone, cold and alien. "If you think that, then maybe I don't have a daughter named Audrey." Her words pierced me like a knife, but I held myself together. Silence became my shield. All I could say, quietly but firmly, was, "Then so be it." 6 weeks had passed since that final confrontation in my living room. 6 weeks of silence that was almost painful. I received no calls, no messages, and it seemed like the whole family had decided to disappear from my life, like smoke. Only occasionally, when someone from the family or a friend posted on social media, did I feel more and more like I was on the periphery of their world. Some people only think of themselves, my mom posted last week. The post was followed by a dozen sympathetic comments from those who only knew her side of the story, who had always been on her side. All these people supported her without asking questions, without trying to understand what was really happening. Family should always come first, they claimed. But wasn't I part of that family too? Didn't my feelings matter? Sarah posted a picture of her daughter yesterday, so blessed. This was another post I saw as I scrolled through my feed. She had posted a cute photo with her daughter, saying how wonderful it was to be a mother. I read the post, and I had no strength for anything more. It hurt. I couldn't understand how they could fail to realize what was actually happening in my life. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling that emptiness grow inside me, as an invisible wall slowly built itself between me and those who had once been my family. But I didn't give up. I kept living my life, and though there was no joy in their comments or posts, I knew one thing: I was starting to free myself. Time passed, and I no longer cared so much about what they wrote about me on social media. I no longer craved their approval. I no longer needed to be their perfect daughter, sister, or shadow, following all their lives, their plans, and their needs. I was seeking new meaning, and however difficult that search might be, it became my own path. The last article I read was from Emma. A long paragraph about how she feels that her family is all she has, and how important it is to support loved ones no matter what. Reading her words, I thought, they were all still living by their rules, in that system where I had always been second in line. But I didn't want to be part of their world anymore, when my own desires and needs had no place.